Hello and welcome to the Sineads podcast. Today's episode is all about attachment styles. Sinead Keane, therapist, and my business partner are here to talk about our personal attachment styles, our experiences on it, and how we can improve our relationships and become more secure by knowing our attachment styles firsthand. Hope you enjoy. And today on the show we have Sinead Keane. Sinead is actually one of my business partners, and actually I will just let her tell you about herself.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Sinead. It is so lovely to be here. So yes, I am a psychotherapist and yoga teacher. They're just the labels that I've placed on myself, but I work, I suppose, one-to-one with a lot of people in a therapeutic setting, online and in person. And then I'm extremely passionate about meditation and tuning inward, connecting inward. And that's actually how I kind of got onto my yoga journey. So, and hence how you and I ended up working together. So we produced or came up with Shine Online. So we've run a couple of courses in that, and it has been magical, hasn't it?
Yes, and I just want to go back to where it all began for me and you. So basically, when I was running my retreats, which is called Brave Retreats, it's basically for girls who want to travel, who don't have friends that want to travel. So basically, we all come together and we travel Thailand, and we do you go to a camp and we do loads of workshops. Basically like a self-development retreat that will be coming one day when Corona just fucks off, basically. So anyway, at the time I needed to hire a therapist, to just for the girls to do little sessions and to look after the girls and just, to just expand that self-development. And what happened was I put out an ad to hire a therapist. And I mean, the people came flooding in, like literally flooding in. And I didn't even know, like I had an assistant at the time and I was like, right, these are some of the characteristics that I have. Can you like sort of, go through and just knock out some people that I know that I definitely can't have so that I don't have to interview like a million people. So she did that, and you came to mind, a few other people came to mind. But the night before I interviewed you, it was a Skype interview, I was in Australia, I had a dream about your name, which is so bizarre. How bizarre. Sorry, TikTok coming on. So I had a dream about your name. So it was like I kind of knew that I was going to hire you before I had the call or even knew what you looked like. So, which is so strange. And then you came on the call and you just blew me away, because not only did you have the qualifications, you just knew you could help. You really, really believed in yourself. You were like, I know that I can help these girls. I know I can further their self-development. And that was it for me. It was complete self-belief. So even if you're going into an interview, just pretend you have self-belief. It was just like, she's like, I know. She's like, I know I can help. And I couldn't get over the interview itself. But I would like you to talk us through how you have all that self-belief in yourself, and, how that interview was for you. Actually, or how you felt.
It's so lovely to hear you talking about it, hearing it from your side, because like, to be honest, when you put up that advert, like I knew that was my job. I was like, I wasn't even like doubting for a second that it was anyone else's. And it's so funny to hear that like there was hundreds or however many applications, because I'm like, that had my name on over it from the beginning. And that might sound arrogant or cocky, to some, but for me it was like, I so believed in myself, and I so believed in, to be honest, you and what you were offering. I was like, I so want to be a part of this, and I felt like it was like a movement. And I think what has drawn me so much to you and your work and your message is the fact that you are another Irish woman. And like, I suppose I've been listening to people from all around the world, especially America. And don't get me wrong, I value what they have to say, like in my training and all that. But it's just so lovely to hear, like a country Irish girl who I think so many people can relate to. So that's, I think, why I was like, oh my God, I want to be part of this movement. And Yeah, that when you told me you dreamt about my name, I just like couldn't stop laughing. I was like, well, there's my that's how strong the manifestation game
I
was.
know. I didn't want to tell you because I wanted to be like a stern boss. Like, I didn't want to tell you that, like, you basically, like, I felt like you had the job before. So I was like playing it really cool, but I'm so bad at being professional. Like, I'm so bad at it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because at the start of the interview, I remember you were like all professional, and I think you were even maybe a bit nervous. And then at the end, you were laughing, and you told me that day you were like, here, fake being professional. But and that yeah, so it's so funny to hear you talking about that. But yeah, like I suppose that self belief, where has that come from? It's interesting, and I have reflected on that. In that, I did not always have that self belief, and as we talk about, I know we're going to be talking about attachment styles and that today. You'll get a sense of the old me, um, but I didn't always have that sense of self belief. I suppose as I was going through my therapy training, I learned so much about myself. But for me, I think like the biggest, I suppose, going through the biggest life event, which was for me was losing my father and going through that grief and that pain and that hurt and that darkness. I suppose it's what brought about my spiritual awakening, and it was like it was that was it. It was an awakening in me, kind of okay, kind of one of the worst things I ever imagined happening has happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, it just made me wake up and realize how short life was or is. It was like, okay, like I want to live life to the absolute full. And I was like, you know, living an ordinary life kind of wasn't really attractive to me. And it was like, I actually knew from a very young age that I did have something inside me that I had to share with the world. And I look back, like I know that I knew there was something inside me. But I used to keep myself small in order to keep other people, I suppose, comfortable. And also that fear of judgment. Oh my God, which I know you spoke about a bit in another podcast episode. But yeah, I think going through that life experience made me realize, oh my God, it's now or never. Like life is so short. Anything can happen on any given day. So it kind of spiraled from there. And then obviously just doing all the self-development work, finding manifestation work, visualization, that was huge for me, huge on my journey. And that's kind of what I used to manifest this beautiful friendship.
I'm not even joking, right? So that's one of the biggest questions for me when people ask me, they're like, how do I manifest? How do I manifest? And I honestly find it so hard to describe how to manifest without being like, you need to read this whole book before we can talk. Like, if anyone wants to learn about manifesting, the book that I visualized my whole life that I'm sitting in right now, it's called Ask and It Is Given. I don't know if you've read that one. But
Hicks, is it?
yeah, so that is sort of where I began my manifesting journey. It's kind of a book. It literally it's not about, the thing about it is, it's not about visualizing what you want and thinking that's what you're going to get. You have to raise your own vibration. You have to be grateful for what you have. It's basically about wanting more for yourself while accepting the present moment as it is, rather than wanting more than you already have. Like, it's hard to understand manifesting unless you read the whole book, but that is probably another podcast, to be honest. We could probably talk about manifesting.
Sure.
I'd love to get Gabby Bernstein on to talk about manifesting.
Oh, I've just finished her book, Super Attractor. She's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and get her on, but I'm too nervous right now, so I have to, before I get her on, because that would just, because she follows me. She fucking follows me.
What?
I know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so she follows me. So I will ask her one day to talk about like a whole thing about manifesting, because people just need to know, and they need to be obsessed with it because it works in my whole life.
100%. Even when I was logging on for this podcast today, I was like, oh my God, like if you told me 2 years ago I was going to be logging on to a podcast with you, I'd be like, what? Like, you know, it's just, but when it's happening then in real life, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's different. It's amazing, and you embrace it and you're grateful and all. But I think that is the key to manifesting. And I'm aware that you don't want to go down this route too much, but it's the deservability piece, isn't it? Like feeling, actually, no, I do deserve this. I am worthy of this.
Oh yeah, like,
and then you'll receive it.
Yeah, like this is the one thing that really stuck with me. People think like, oh, I manifest something, and then they're like, they get so disheartened that doesn't work. And I'm like, you have to believe that you deserve that. And for you to, in order for you to manifest appropriately, you need to do some shadow work on yourself and understand your own self-love. Like I had to go way back in therapy. I had to go back to my childhood. I had to go back to the bullies. I had to go back to the one of the biggest things for me was the don't show, like people tell me to not show off, and me really dimming my personality down to like fit into society. And then I had to work through all that. And then when I started to believe that I deserve all the things that I am manifesting, then they unfold in front of your eyes, as we all know. But
yeah, and that's the thing. That's the hard work around manifesting that maybe we probably don't talk about enough, is going back and debunking all those limiting beliefs that like aren't true and hold us back so much. But that's where the work is, and it takes time, doesn't it?
oh yeah, it takes a lot of time. And to this day, it's still hard for me to, you know, say something that I really want, like, and I'm like, oh, as if, like, I then I have to work on that as if, and be like, no,
Well,
like,
you just gave an example there of Gabby Bernstein.
exactly. I have to
That's
believe that I
something you
deserve
really
it.
want.
And one of the things that as well, like with public speaking, and I stood on stage and just like crumbled all the time, just because I just didn't believe that I had to be up there. There was something that had to be in place for me to believe that I should be up there, and like I had to really, really work on that. And I've kind of got to that point. Like I actually had to like get physical proof. I don't know, like, you know, like that I was successful to be up there talking about success and stuff. So I know
So
the
how
Gabby
did
Bernstein
you
thing.
how did you work through that? How did you overcome that?
I think one of the I think listening to everyone's emails and messages that people send me really helped me believe in myself as well. Like when people send me a message saying like I've changed their life or something, like that physical evidence for me like really helps me. So if anyone, you know, like that's what I try to do as well. I try to send messages to people that really inspire me and be like, thank you so much, because that's something I need to do this week actually, because I've been thinking about it a lot. Because that can actually help them feel worthy. And even in relationships as well, I always say, you know, what do you like about your partner? Like, you know, when I'm on podcasts or chatting to someone, and then like I'm like, have you ever told your partner that? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, you need to tell them, because they need to be reassured. And it's the same thing with like worthy of yourself.
You
So
do that to me all the time.
like what?
You're like, and have you ever asked him that? And does he know that? And did you ask him that question? Or
Yeah.
have you done all those I don't know what you call them, but those questions, like love questions? I'm like, no. So yeah, it's so true. And that is, I think, one of the biggest things is like that in, this is kind of going off topic, but in relationships, kind of that we assume that somebody else knows, or that, you know, but they absolutely don't.
Yeah, well, that can bring us into attachment style now, because we're going to talk about relationships now. So basically, that we wanted this podcast to be sort of focused on attachment styles, because people, this is what like a really requested podcast was for me. So basically, we have to talk about, first of all, what is an attachment style in relationships. What I've learned is that attachment style is something you gain from your young age, or sometimes through a traumatic relationship, or, you know, just through your past experiences, you gain an attachment style. So we've got 3 attachment styles. We have got avoidant, myself. We have an anxious, and we have a secure. So I'll talk about avoidant, because that is something I have very much experience in. So being an avoidant attachment style means, you know, something has happened to me in the past through my experiences that I have been devastatingly hurt, to the point where getting close to someone is very, very hard, because I try to stay away from getting close to someone because it will hurt. My brain is trying to protect me from getting hurt the way I did in the past. So I basically use strategies such as, if I'm with someone, I will use strategies like, you know, this is just casual. You know, I'll use things maybe like the way they dress or the way they look or their style, and use that as like a ploy to be like, oh yeah, they're not really for me. You know, we're not in the same boat. We're different, blah, blah, blah. I also use things like the shadow of the third. No, that's not the shadow. Oh yeah, it's called the Phantom X. Sorry, that's a different book. The Phantom X is basically an X that people use to. So basically, I'd be like, well, he isn't. I'm not in love as I am with that person that I was with my ex. I am. Sorry, Mom. Oh my God, I can't cope. Mummy, I'm recording a podcast. I can't cope because I don't know how to edit that out.
Just leave it in.
He always does this. Anyway, so the Phantom X is basically something. So basically, I'll be like, oh, well, he wasn't like my ex. So, you know, he's not the one. That's another toy. So it's like, he's not the one. These things. And bearing in mind, like, there's Phantom X, and then the next thing you'll go with someone else, and then the Phantom X will be that person you had a Phantom X with. So you'll be with someone else, you'll be thinking about another person. But this is just all like a conditioned pattern in my brain to keep me from getting so close to someone and being so vulnerable that I become hurt again. And the fact that we need to be aware of these things, you'll probably notice, like, people always say, oh, my boyfriend or the guy I'm seeing is an avoidant. And without the awareness, it's really hard to change. So with the awareness of me being avoidant, I had plenty of failed relationships up until like now I'm with Jack. So I've been working through this. So if you recognize yourself in them, it's fine. We can change it. It's okay. We can adapt. But I'll let Sinead talk about anxious, because I am a little anxious avoidant as well. But you're mostly anxious. But
I'm full on anxious, girl. I'm 100%. No, I'm not 100% in that. I was, but I've started to move more towards secure, thankfully. But I think those anxious tendencies will always, be there in some shape or form where they pop their head up. But it's that awareness you spoke about, being aware and being able to self-reflect and say, oh, okay, there's that pattern again. So I suppose the traits of an anxious attachment style is very much, seeking validation, reassurance from your partner, and looking outside of yourself. I think it's kind of the attachment style that can often be labeled as needy, or and my name is actually Sinead, so my friends used to always call me needy lady.
Oh God.
In college and that, because like it would even come into my friendships where I would, especially after drinking, like if I'd been on like a bender for a few days or that in college, like the next, trying to come down off that, I would be just like in a shell.
Hold me.
Yeah, hold me. I was so needy. And I also lived with another needy person who I won't name. So that was amazing because we used to gravitate to each other. But so I think it's often the attachment style that's labeled as needy, or sometimes even, I know I've heard you talk about it like that like being called a psycho,
Mm-hmm.
So when it's really out of control, that's how it can manifest. It's really trying to control everything outside of you. So yeah, that's how it would have shown up quite a bit. And even I do believe that that attachment begins at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my attachment style for as long as I can remember. Like I was always so anxious leaving my mother, and like my therapist laughs at me because she's like, it's like you've got a double-decker bus full of people, like when you're going out of town. Like I tried to go solo traveling, and before I knew it, like all these different people were coming to meet me while I was traveling, because I end up being like, oh sure, come along, and like it's I suppose it's always kind of going back to that default of needing a comfort blanket out, or that's, I suppose, that secure base outside of myself. But I've been working on that, and over the last, I identified that I had an anxious attachment when I was doing my training, my psychotherapy training, probably I'd say 4 or 5 years ago. And I actually was very upset when I realized that, because I was like,
I was very upset.
Really?
It really, really hit me really hard, because at the end of like learning about avoidant behavior, they basically talk about this movie, and it's like this person doesn't think you're the one, so they move on, and then you think the movie's over. But in an avoidant, the movie's not over. They just go on to someone else, and then they're not the one. And the thing about being an avoidant is the fact that you never get close enough to feel real love and to feel that real vulnerability. And when I found that out, I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to become more secure, because there is no better feeling than being in love. There's no better feeling of lying in the bed looking eyes to eyes with someone. Like, there is just no better feeling, and I just want people to not be afraid of that, and that's what I was afraid of. So my avoidant attachment sort of came with the first heartbreak, the major heartbreak, because I was,
do you think that was your attachment style before that, or what, when you think back to childhood?
when I had to like really go through all this, because I had to go through it because I couldn't understand if I was an avoidant before the relationship. But I do actually remember being a bit of avoidant before as well, always being the one to break up with someone, always being the step away from love, you know,
Getting
and
out
just
first
like never
before they
really,
could get out.
yeah, so just, yeah, messing up first. A lot of avoidants do that. We mess up first as well. And I remember really not wanting him to be my boyfriend, but like he just kept with avoidance. If you're with an avoidant, you'll notice that you will need to be slipped into it, sort of like, and then get more comfortable and more vulnerable. And then I just got to the point where I was completely head over heels, like completely vulnerable in love. I really let everything down. And then obviously it got worse whenever we broke up. So I just was like, it was like taken from me. And it wasn't a toxic relationship. It was completely like notebook love relationship. And it was taken from me so quickly because, you know, he had cheated. And we were so young. It's a long story. But anyway, he cheated just one random night. And I found out about it a few months later. And that was taken from me. Like the complete vulnerable love that I finally fell into was completely taken from me. And I was put then in a state of shock, and then a state of absolute pain after the shock. The shock was like me going mental and on tequila and not caring and like going through that stage. And then like
Denial.
yeah. And then I was just like, he's not coming after me. And it was just so horrible. And like I went through a really, really, really dark period of my life. It was got to do with me and how I felt. I didn't feel enough. And then I obviously learned about human behavior and realized, you know, it's not about me. Like I'm always born enough. Like we're always born enough. Anyone wants to know that we are. And if that person did something and you're not together, then that person's just not the right person for you, and you are enough for someone. So that's how my attachment style, I think, grew stronger. And then I just, every relationship after that was like casual, until I got with someone who's secure. So we can talk about secure now. We both have secure partners at the minute. So you can explain secure if you want.
Yeah, so secure makes up they say about 50% of the population, but I don't know where they're all hiding, because
I don't know either.
I see insecure attachments all over the place. But yeah, so what secure looks like in a relationship is, you know, I suppose comfortable to open up, comfortable to be vulnerable, you know, within reason. I say that with, like, I think even if you're secure, I think sometimes you can still have traits of an anxious or as an avoidant. But in general, you're mainly, I suppose, secure. So yeah, they're comfortable with that, or more comfortable than others with that vulnerability, with that opening up, with, yeah, I suppose being dependent on, and, you know, being dependent on somebody else and allowing somebody else to be dependent on them.
Yeah, and
I say,
chill.
yeah, exactly. Just not reacting, not being triggered. How, I suppose, people who with an anxious or an avoidant attachment style may be triggered in relationships. So like big triggers for me would be like, I'm not too bad with this one, but, you know, not hearing from someone for a very long time, especially if, I guess, if they're on a night out or that would be like, you know, well, where are they? Like, what are they doing? Yeah. And being with a secure partner, and if they're aware that that's a trigger for you, then, you know, they're able to say, okay, I'm actually, you know, just checking in hourly, whatever, and letting you know I'm here, I'm there, whatever. Being with a secure person can hugely help you to begin to develop a secure attachment. And oh my God, there's no better feeling. It's just like,
but
amazing,
it's actually scary. Like it's actually scary as well when you've come from like a heartbreak, and then you go into this amazing secure person and you're just not ready, because it can sometimes be the hardest part, because like this person is great, but it's just the wrong time. And before we go into that, I wanted to talk about protest behavior. This isn't an anxious attachment style. So protest behavior is like when they need reassurance and they need so they do things out of to just get attention. Like they will be like, okay, you know what, I don't want to be with you anymore if you're going to be like that, because they want you to, they threaten a relationship, they want you to run. They also will probably call you about 20 million times if you don't answer the phone or text. Like that's protest behavior. They will maybe storm out and wait for you to come after them. That's sort of like an anxious behavior, because they need you to be like, no, come back. But
or withdrawal, like silent treatment, that's kind of what I would have went towards after. Kind of, you know, letting the partner know that you're not happy about something by by withdrawing into yourself and waiting, and that was it. That's how you show up. I'd be waiting for them to say like, what's wrong with you,
Yeah.
or even if they did that, then sometimes I'd be like, nothing, even though
Yeah.
like clearly my body language and how I was behaving was showing
But
that there
once
was something.
the thing is, like, sorry, just to interrupt there. Once you know that that's a protest behavior, like that awareness can change your entire relationship. You can now know that you did those things to get his attention and to get him to grovel, but instead now you can use it and be like, this is actually how I feel right now, and I need more reassurance from you at this moment in time. And there's a story in my book. I have a relationships book. It's in the what you call it down below. If
Notes.
anyone wants to know, and I talk about this. So with two different attachment styles, for example, we had, I can't even remember who was in, it was actually a story about me and a guy I was seeing, but like I changed the names, and I even said to him, I was like, I think it was Shannon and Jason. I was like, can I use Shannon and Jason? And he was like, no. And I was like, right, okay, right. I had to completely, because he was like, no, that's too obvious. So I just changed it. I can't even remember, but anyway. So basically, because I am like avoidant and anxious and he's completely secure, for example, like there was a night that he went out. No, I say with me, I would go out after work all the time and wouldn't give a shit, out, blah blah blah, dancing, whatever. And because he's so secure, if it doesn't bother him, he just thinks I'm out and blah blah blah, and I'll come back and text him whatever, blah blah blah. But like if he goes out, right, so he went out, didn't, obviously after work or something, like didn't tell me, and I see him in the background of someone's story. Now that sounds psycho, but we all do it. Anyone listening to this podcast, I know that's what you do, right? You look at the back and you think, there he is, right? So he never told me where he was. And I was shaking. I was like in my bed shaking, right? I don't know. I was just like, oh my God, he's out, he's out. And like he never texted me the whole night. And then like I was like, a protest behavior would be like texting and ringing and being like, what are you doing? What's happening? Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you even, like, you're actually going mad at this person. But like, because he is such a secure person, he didn't think this would annoy me in the slightest. He actually wasn't doing anything wrong. But my
Yeah.
protest behavior made me look insane. So he's like, oh my God, why are you being a psycho? By the way, nobody should be called a psycho. Just, there's also a chapter called Abolishing the Psycho. We'll talk about that later. So because I'm not aware of my attachment side and he's not aware of his and mine, then that is collided in the relationship. So instead I could go, you know what, I'm quite anxious because, of my past relationships, a bit of trauma, and I actually need you to text me when you're out. I need you to text me and say, look, I'm out, I'll be home later, blah, blah, blah. And that's where the conversation would end. And like from then on, he texted me that instead of, like, I just told him that's, because I think people think we have all the same attachment styles and we all have the same sort of personalities, but in fact we're totally different, and I need to know that, whilst he doesn't actually need to know that I'm out.
Yeah, and that's it. Like that's where the solution lies, because of your attachment style, you might end up saying, I would never do that to you because, you wouldn't want that done. But that might not be an issue at all for them. Like this guy, and I can very much relate to that in my relationship, where it's like, it's not an issue. Like if you're, whatever you're doing, that's fine. Like, this like complete, I suppose, trust really.
Yeah.
And but how you can solve that is through communication and not through those behaviors you just spoke about, like withdrawal or ringing 100,000 times. It's by communicating that, like, the actual core of the issue. When you do this I feel, and I feel a solution would be if you could contact me, I don't know, and come up with some agreement. So that is where the solution, it's communication, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about the time that I had needed you because, I had sort of recognized that I was an avoidant and I was in a relationship. Well, not, like I wasn't in a relationship because I couldn't commit because I was an avoidant and I didn't realize. And then he was an anxious. So that relationship broke down because of that, because I wanted to run. Even though I loved him, I had to run because he was anxious, trying to get me to do things, and I was like getting pushed farther away. But then like I realized then my attachment side was avoidant when I started going out with Jay. And when I was going out with Jay, I just knew he was really secure, and it was really helping me with my attachment style. And I knew that my feelings, I needed to understand and get through it. So I actually contacted you as well to help me with my attachment style, because it was really hard for me to commit, and I needed it. Because once, what I notice when I get close to someone is that it's like an emotional wound is like opening, and I'm like, reverse, 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 back it up, back it up, back it up. And I will like use some crazy excuse, like, you know what, he doesn't meditate, so we shouldn't be together. We shouldn't be together, so he doesn't meditate. He doesn't read books. That's the things that I used to say to myself, right? And then I realized, you know, I am the problem here. It's not the fact that he's not reading books. It's like the fact that I'm so scared to be vulnerable. And I knew
And how that would manifest for me is I would start saying, I need to control that they meditate and that they read books. So that's how the anxious shows up. It's like, I will try and fix you, you know? And oh my God, it does not work, girls. And boys, I'm telling you now, don't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know. And I'll tell you a story about me, because that, you know, when I was going through all that, like, you know, people aren't like me, and like I need someone like me. And then like I was getting a massage once, and he's quite spiritual, and he's very spiritual, and his wife isn't, like, she isn't into what he's into. And I goes, well, how does that work? And he was like, she is an angel sent down from heaven for me, and I accept her the way she is, and she accepts me, and that's love. And I was like, you're fucking right. So at that point then I was like starting to like understand my attachment style, and understand that like every time I wanted to back out, I needed to lean, like you told me, you were like, you need to lean forward and like break through it. Like some of the advice you would tell me, like, or what can you remember from those sessions?
I you know, yeah, definitely that, but also the fact that it was with somebody who had a secure attachment was a huge advantage. You know, like almost learning from their behavior, you know, what that actually looks like in a relationship. So that's a huge way that you can, you know, overcome this or work towards becoming more secure, is like, okay, what is their behavior, you know, and almost trying to model that. And as you said, like leaning in is huge. Also I think the awareness isn't the awareness absolutely number one, because you see it everywhere, then it shows up everywhere, and you're able to challenge those thoughts or those, you know, that instinct, because it comes as an instinct. It's like an instinctual drive to respond in a particular way. But the more aware you are of it, the more you're able to catch it and say, oh, there's that lovely pattern coming back up again. Like for me, it's coming up again this week because I'm moving out of my family home. So it shows up a lot in my relationship with my mother, where it's like, oh, I need to be close to her, like, you know, overly attached to her. And you know, the fact that she's aware of my relation or my attachment style, and my boyfriend is, they're able to kind of, well, I'm able to notice it as well, but they're also like, okay, Sinead, like, reality check, you're moving 30 minutes down the road, like, you can come visit me, you know. So that awareness and that being able to kind of find the truth in what's coming up, and being able to pause, and that's where our whole, you know, meditation comes in, isn't it? Like being able to have that ability to take that pause and say, okay, I'm not just reacting, you know, I can choose my response.
Yeah. And I'm just going to talk about a time that I was completely unaware of my attachment style, and I was avoidant and anxious. And a lot of people may don't understand that avoidant and anxious is very, very hard to work together. But especially if you don't know, like a toxic relationship would be anxious and avoidant, because one is trying to avoid pain, and the one is trying to avoid closeness, and the other one needs the more closeness to feel secure. So it's like complete chaos if you don't know. So when I was going out,
there is no awareness there's chaos.
Yeah, so it was really hard for me, like after that first breakup, and then I started going out with Sam, and he would be more like an anxious, and I didn't know that, like, he needed more from me to feel secure in the relationship. So, and I was so scared of that. I was like, oh, and he was like, I need you to live, but like he was like, I need you to live in this country for like a long period of time for us to be boyfriend girlfriend. I wanted to be boyfriend girlfriend, but I needed freedom as well. And I just was like, I don't know, like I can't like live here like right now because I'm traveling. And like he needed my freedom to be like stomped down for him to feel like we could be together, whilst I needed to have freedom. So I ran, and then like it was just so hard for the both of us because we couldn't really understand what was going on, and it was really hard because we did love each other, but he needed me to be in one place for his attachment style to feel secured, whilst at that time. But you know what, if I would have knew at the time, I would have been like, look, if you say things like that to me, it's going to really scare me, so we need to start and take it slow and like go through it. And I think like it would have worked out different if
you had that awareness and if you were able to communicate that then.
Yeah, like it would have been like if I would have known, because I just knew I wanted to run. Like when he was like, live here forever, I was like, I need to get out of here before. But then what you need to realize, like, I just can't express enough that like the feeling of love is just something that you need to like lean into, because it is actually so beautiful. And even though it seems so scary, with the tools and things, you know, the books we tell you to read, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You break up, like at least you love.
Yeah, it's so true. And I actually remember having that thought once. It actually came to me. It was almost like an existential crisis for me. I remember being in class and this was ever before I lost my father, so I hadn't really experienced grief or loss on that level through bereavement. But I remember hearing about somebody who I knew who lost a very close loved one. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this love thing, like, is it worth it? Like, would I be better off living in exile, like away from everyone? You know, is the love worth the pain? And like, when you think about it, it absolutely is. Like, as you said, as you described, lying in bed and like gazing into somebody's eyes, like those moments are just pure gold, like, aren't they? And I think you're really missing out, or you're not living life fully if you're constantly protecting yourself from that. And like, I think and I know you can relate to this, having gone through such a deep pain and loss, and I know you can relate to that with the breakup of your relationship. It's like, okay, I've survived that, you know, I've gotten through it. Like, I will be able to do it again if it happens. And the thing is, it will happen in some shape or form again, because like, I don't mean to be morbid here, but like, we all, you know,
we're all gonna die at some point.
Exactly. So there's going to be multiple losses in our lives, so trying to avoid it's unavoidable, you know.
Yeah, it's inevitable. And that's why we need to learn the tools. Like, I'll never forget, like, when I broke up with that person that like wasn't working, the first, like, you know, without like, obviously when I broke up, when I had the ultimate heartbreak, you know, the one that really took me to that dark place, I had no tools, hadn't read any books, like I didn't study human behavior at the stage, like I didn't know anything about, I just knew that I wasn't enough. And then the second time, and I'm telling you, I was heartbroken. I loved this person. It was very hard for me as well. But the difference in the heartbreak with the tools that I had, I knew that I needed to feel it and not avoid it. I knew that I had to cry, and I knew that I had to sit and talk about gratitude for that person. And I just knew how to break up with someone. And that's why I wanted to tell people that, like, when you have the tools, that love is worth it, because you can get over it a bit better.
Yeah, and as an anxious person, like, having an anxious attachment style, my core, like, the biggest fear for me, my like core wound, is being alone. Like, that is like, and it's so interesting for me to hear then that other people's is being vulnerable with somebody else. Does that make sense? Like, it's like the opposite, whereas mine is like being alone. And I've had to face that, and oh my God, I can't describe how, like, the pain of it, but also the liberation that comes with it from facing your deepest fear. Does that make sense? And it's like, okay, that's actually what I was afraid of. Like, the mind can make it out to be so much worse than it actually is. So facing that core, like, deepest fear of mine, it's like, okay, actually, it's not actually that bad. And I can deal with that if that does happen, you know, again.
Yeah. Can I ask you how you think you've become more secure now, knowing that you have an anxious attachment style?
Yeah, so it's taken lots of work, and like consciously trying to work on it. And then I think in roundabout ways, probably working on it without realizing that it was actually, you know, improving my attachment style. Definitely that facing that fear,
Facing being alone.
Facing that has been huge for me. And then also linked into that, learning to self-soothe, like learning to soothe myself, because I always looked outside of myself. Like, I always,
validation.
yeah, that's where the answers lay, I thought. And I would have been very like that as a child, even, going to my mom for like comfort all the time. Yeah, learning to self-soothe and validate myself and be whole, on my own. Like, I think that has been huge. And it's ongoing. As I say, these thoughts still come up. It's not like you arrive at this place and it's like, oh yeah, like amazing. Like, yeah, exactly. But it's that awareness then to catch it when it does come up. I think another big thing for me as well was like finding what I'm passionate about and what my purpose is, and being able to do that on my own, not needing anyone else to do that. Like, I remember, like, in my relationship, my partner is very independent and has different hobbies. And I remember at one point like being like, you're always off doing other things, and like, why can't you why don't you want to spend more time with me? And like, when I look back now, I'm so grateful for him that he was like, no, you need to
need the distance, like.
Yeah, exactly. And that was it. I wanted to mesh almost as one.
Yeah. That soothed your attachment style. That's because you're afraid of being alone. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people will probably resonate with that right now, I reckon.
I think so. And like, it's and it's getting rid of that psycho thing that you said, like debunking the psycho or demolishing the psycho, because that is what comes up for somebody with an anxious attachment style. And that book, Attached, I love how it normalizes that and makes you realize that, okay, it's actually a primitive response from the brain, in that, like, if you think way back when, being alone, you were more at risk, to not survive, So if you think way back when, to like our ancestors, I suppose, from that primitive brain, it made more sense to be connected with someone, So yeah, I'm so grateful when I look back at that experience, and he was like, no, you need to find more hobbies. Like, you need to find what it is for you. And oh my God, even saying that is like, part of me is like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But now I'm like so grateful, and yeah, being able to find what I'm passionate about. It's really universal at this stage, where he's like, okay, are we spending time together? Like, can you put down the book? Can you stop doing yoga? Whatever. So yeah, finding those things. And also, as I mentioned, kind of role modeling the secure attachment style, looking at how
they react.
Yeah, how they react and behave. That has been huge. And I think the last thing is probably my sense of fate. Kind of believing deep down that like all will work out for the good. And it may be a huge challenge to get to that place. And there may be obstacles that you never imagine. But it's like realizing and knowing that it will work out eventually.
And you'll be with the person that you're supposed to be with. And
exactly.
Yeah. Well,
what about you? How have you moved more towards secure with an avoidant?
Because I think, like, after all the hurt, that every time I had a relationship, I just thought they're not the one, and realizing that it's nothing to do with them right now, I have to lean in. And so every time I feel like I want a distance, or I use something as an excuse, I recognize that in my brain as an excuse.
I love when you say,
as a way to try and not keep me close. So instead I decide to lean in, and then I talk about all the things that I'm grateful for. Another big thing in an avoidant is being really present. Avoidants tend to think, should I be with this person? They sit in their bed and they go, should I be with this person? Maybe the other person did this better and I did this, and maybe I should be with someone else. But when you're truly in the arms of someone that you love, and just being there and just being like, I really enjoy this right now, and I love this, and I'm really enjoying this, then that is like something that has really got me through. And like, I am so deep into the love now, I'm like mushy with Jack. So, but without knowing it, I think I would have pushed him away a long time ago. And I'm so glad that I kept there. And I just want people to know that, yeah, you can stay away from love by keeping someone at arm's length, but there's just no better feeling. And just to know that if it doesn't work out, it's okay if it doesn't work out, but as long as you like went fully in. I actually have a tattoo on my wrist as well of like that first heartbreak, and everyone's like, you're gonna get rid of it, and I'm like, it just reminds me what love is, and it reminds me like that I need to be vulnerable and feel that, and I do feel that now. And I'm so happy that like I read that book, which is called Attached, by the way, guys. So it's just a book solely on attachment types. It will tell you what you are, because I honestly thought I was secure. I swear I thought I was secure. Like, no, I'm grand, sure, Jesus, I don't care what he does or whatever. I'm like, whatever. But in fact, I was avoiding all closeness. Maybe the person they're seeing going out with boyfriend is an avoidant. I have blogs on that as well. It's just to kind of recognize your protest behavior, talk about which attachment styles you are, and really, you know, talk and communicate on what they are. Because I would have told Jack, you know, these things scare me, so like, let's go slow. And then he would completely, like, if he was an anxious, I'd be like, oh my god, what the hell. But he's so secure, I'm so lucky. So
we could never be in a relationship.
I swear I'm not even joking. Like, say if Jack, right, I'm not even joking, right, I say this to Jack, I swear if I was sitting on some boy's fucking knee in front of Jack, he'd be like, well, what's correct? Like, he's so chill. Like, whilst if he like I would be anxious jealous. I wouldn't react on it, because I know it's my wee bit of anxiousness coming in. But like, if he does something, like, I'd be like, oh, whilst he's so chill. And it's so refreshing as well for someone to be that chill. You will probably notice that if the person is like trying to control or be like jealous of you, they're actually really anxious and they just need more, maybe, reassurance and more communication. So don't think like someone is trying, like, you might think, oh, they're trying to control my behavior in a way, but like, I just think they really need something stronger to feel reassured. So it's something you could probably talk about in your relationships right now. I think
definitely,
and like, a lot of food for thought in relationships after this podcast anyway.
Yeah, but getting rid of that stigma around it, like, you know, because there has to be that willingness on both parts, you know, on both sides, to say, okay, yeah, I am willing to learn, because you need that awareness. The awareness is absolutely key. So if it's one person being like, I want to work on this, and it's like, you know, flogging a dead horse, that the other person like isn't engaging, that's really hard. Like, you know, you need the other person to be willing on some level. Okay, yeah, right, I will look at this, like, I will try and identify, and like, I will take on board what you're saying, you know. So I think that willingness has to be there on both parts.
And just to understand that people are completely different, and we're not psychos, by the way. Abolish psycho. It's not a word. It's just, we just need more. Okay. But yeah, I think we got it all there. What do you think?
I think so. We could definitely talk for hours and hours and hours about loads.
No, but we just don't want to keep people too long. So it's like, let me see where I'm at now. I think we're perfect.
No, I'm happy.
I pretty much think we're under an hour or just above it. So I just want to say thank you to Sinead for coming on. I actually love this podcast. Like, I'm in my element and my alignment right now, talking about attachment styles. And I also talk about it in my book. You can get to know your partner more in my book. It's in my, whatchamacallit, down below. I don't even know what you call that thing, the blurb thing. It's down below. I will leave Sinead's details. She probably has do you still have a long waiting list?
Yes, I do at the moment, but I'm doing lots of group work and that. So
doing lots of group work. Yeah. Oh yeah, and we also have an online meditation group called Shine Online that me and Sinead work on together. At the moment, it is on halt because I don't know where I'm going to be for 4 weeks straight, so it's been really hard to deal with. But hopefully you can get into that, and we'll probably have another podcast on meditation one day. But for now, thank you very much, and bye bye.